the Securities and Commodities Authorities in the UAE, as well as the Arab Federation of Exchanges. The topic is not only important, it's niche, so a subtech for Arab regulators. And before we start out, I just wanted to make clear some of our house webinar rules, which is we kindly ask all participants to please mute their microphones throughout the event, as well as their video feeds. If you should have any questions during the course of the webinar, please send them on the chat, addressing who you'd like to ask and the question, and hopefully we'll be able to, set forth as much questions as possible given the time limit. It's also noteworthy that this webinar will have, in the aftermath of the webinar, there's going to be a report from the findings of the webinar that will be shared for future research. And so now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Ubaid Al-Zabi. He's the CEO of the Securities and Commodities Authorities for the UAE, and he holds a PhD in banking and finance from Durham University. He represents the Gulf Regulatory Authorities in the International Federation of Accountants, as well as being a member of the Consultative Advisory Group for the International Auditing and Assurance Standards. Dr. Zabi, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
First of all, assalamu alaikum and very good morning. I'm really, pleased to be here chatting with the eminence, advisor professionals and, regulators. So I think, our conference will be very fruitful. We're going to have excellent takeaways, hopefully, after the all sessions we're going to have today. So I'm really welcome you all to the ASCA and AFE joint webinar on subtech for Arab regulators on evaluations of supervisory technology for capital markets. I would first like to welcome representatives from Arab Federations of Exchange, Mr. Rami Al-Dukani, Secretary Generals, AFE, and other esteemed delegates and speakers to this prestigious seminar. I take this opportunity also to thank Financial Conduct Authority at the UK Global Financial Innovations Network, GPAN, Bahrain, Accenture, Middle East, Ernst & Young, Singapore, FinTech, Galaxy, and Unlock Blockchains for all their supports to collaborations on hosting this high-level seminar and nominations of a speaker to participate in these events. The theme of the webinar today is subtech for Arab regulators in evaluation of supervisory technology for capital markets. Subtech refer to the use of innovations, technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning by supervisory agencies to support supervisions. In other words, it's technology for regulators themselves to be used in their business. Subtech has emerged recently, and already it has gained significant acceptance among advisory regulators around the world, as they are notable examples of their use by capital markets regulators across the globe. I believe they are representatives from the FCA UK. He will be discussing them in detail there later. In the present crisis experience, as you know, during the pandemic COVID-19, the primary concern of regulator is the potential impact of the crisis on the governments, firms, and individuals, especially on the financial sector. Given the very rapid change in economic conditions, system for collecting and analyzing data and its impact through the RegTech and the subtech of very important tools as it provides more granular and real-time information about financial health, requiring significant institutions to report core data. Furthermore, as far as United Arab Emirates capital markets. Within ASCA, we have launched an open text project along with Mursal technology, which permits real-time information sharing and reporting by all market participants. Additionally, ASCA team is already working on deploying e-enforcement, e-supervision tools to ensure effective financial supervision in this new era of remote working and social distancing. While authorities are finding themselves having to analyze new dynamic data sets that are extensively collaborate for cross-border and cross-sections supervisions, we have already a plan to obtain advanced technology to serve these purposes. Across domains, across borders, and pace of change in unsettings and relentless, we have also taken care of this new technology to be, obtained, implemented in our business environments. The only choice lies in electing how we are response by resisting the pressure exerting by external forces and embracing the market distress and instability by actively working across agencies and across border to shape an augmented set of positive outcomes that are the fruit of visions, leaderships, and sound governance. Adding to that, the presentations from FSA UK will be followed by a panel discussions consisting of speakers from diverse backgrounds who have rich experience in their respective fields. They will be discussed these challenges in details, include developments of subject in Arab region, and hope we'll go in to learn from them the new technology, the new ways to adopt this kind of technology very soon. Also, we have that you find the discussions enriching and relevant to your own jurisdictions. We would like to make the panels and the presentations as interactive as possible and will open the floor for questions from the public at the end of each section, hopefully. I request all to actively participate in these discussions, truly discussions, and very important actually, in today's seminar, as findings of the webinar will be compiled into joint reports by AFE and ASCA for future proceedings and research. Let me thank again Arab Federation of Exchange for collaborations with ASCA for organizing this important webinar and initiating dialogue in the region on such an important and critical issue. All the best to all, and we'll go into pass on the mic or the video to the next sessions. Thank you so much, and wish to you good discussions, fruitful discussions during the day. Thank you.
Lara, you're muted, Lara.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Apologies. So I was just saying thank you to Dr. Zabi, and I want to jump in to the crux of today's Subtech webinar theme with a presentation by Mr. Richard Cuttress on the topic of Subtech and FCA, a UK perspective. Mr. Cuttress is the manager of market oversight business intelligence team at FCA UK. The team has implemented a cloud-based platform using big data, advanced analytics, and surveillance technologies. Thank you, Dr. Richard. Are you on?
Hi. Sorry, it's Leo Gosland is going to be presenting first, and then my colleague Richard Cuttress will join us after that.
Yep, I'm here as well.
Hi. So Let me share the screen. 1 second. Can you now see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Is that
Yes,
visible?
yes.
Okay, brilliant.
That's clear.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. So thanks very much for inviting us to speak today. My name's Leo Gosland. I'm the manager of the Advanced Analytics team at the FCA, which is a central data science team set up to look at how data science and advanced analytics can be used across the organisation to improve the way we use data and ultimately supervise firms. And then my colleague Richard Cuttress from the Markets Oversight team will give us an intro into how they're using cloud-based technologies to deliver analytical insight and intelligence. So if we talk through, firstly, an introduction to the FCA. The FCA's remit is very broad, from policy to enforcement. As an organisation, we shape policy and regulation which protects consumers and markets. We review the suitability of firms before we authorise them to offer products and services to consumers. We supervise those firms once they've been authorised and identify cases of misconduct, and we then enforce the regulation by acting swiftly when things go wrong. As the role of the regulator is varied, so is the role of data science and analytics. The FCA currently supervises over 61,000 firms. Over time, the number of firms we regulate, the variety of firms we regulate, and the public's expectation upon us has increased. One of the core goals is to get better insight into this large and increasing population of firms, to quickly spot which represent the larger the number of firms, the harder it becomes to spot the outliers and potential harm using traditional approaches. When we look across the whole population, data and analytics is a key way for us to identify where we should be focusing our attention, where it becomes increasingly hard to do so using traditional approaches. So subtech is a very broad term, and there's a large number of subtech activities going on across the FCA. For this purposes, I'm referring here to the work that we do in our central advanced analytics team, and then, as I said, Rich will give an overview of the work they're doing in the Markets Oversight team. But if we think about when subtech or the extent to which the advanced analytics has been used at the FCA, our team was set up around 2 years ago because there was an understanding that data science and advanced analytics could give us a real benefit and help us really understand and use the data we have within the organisation better. We were doing a lot of work engaging with RegTech firms externally, and we were seeing all of the advances that were happening in the RegTech market, and we wanted to bring some of that innovation and some of that advancement into the organisation, into a central team. And so some of the advantages of using subtech and advanced analytics are listed here. So a key one for us is making better use of the data that we already hold, reducing the burden on firms. So if we're able to use the data that we have within the organisation better, we won't need to collect so much information from firms. Unlocking insight from a wide range of data sets, including unstructured text data. By using data science and advanced analytics and things like natural language processing, we can then suddenly start to really realise the benefit from unstructured text documentation, which has historically been difficult to programmatically analyse. And the use of machine learning. How can we use machine learning to predict harm before it happens? Where we've got labelled data sets with known outcomes, how can we use those to build predictive models to understand and predict harm before it happens? Unlocking insight from the full population of data rather than from just a sample. By using some of these advanced techniques and access to large compute power, we can analyse massive data sets which we previously haven't been able to. Automation. How can we turn manual, time-intensive processes into automated processes and embed those into BAU? And finally, how can we then federate this capability across the organisation? How can we build analytics and make it part of everyday supervisory activity and really embed that into business as usual? So here we've got some examples of some of the work that we've been doing. Again, this isn't comprehensive. This is just a highlight of some of the things that we're working on at the moment. But there are a few really interesting pieces of work here. So The first one, natural language processing, which I mentioned a second ago. How can we use natural language processing to analyse documents and text faster? The FCA collects a massive amount of unstructured text documentation, and in the past, the only way we were able to review that was through manual review or sample-based manual review, more specifically. By using natural language processing, we can analyse all of the documentation. We can do that quickly, and we can use natural language processing to triage that documentation, so we can really focus in on the documents that we really need to review, and the ones which are not relevant, we don't need to review. So that really gives us a step change in how we approach the review of unstructured text documentation. Machine learning, I mentioned that just a second ago, but that's something that we've seen a lot of interest in across the organisation, particularly when we are looking to build predictive models to understand risk in the firms that we regulate. We have labelled outcome data from visits to firms, so when we go and visit a firm and we know something bad has happened, we can take those findings from that visit and from the information we know about firms where something has happened that we were interested in, and we can use that to build a predictive model to try and understand where that might happen in other firms that we regulate. Because, as I said, the number of firms we regulate, around 61,000 firms, is so high, we really need to use data science and analytics for us to pinpoint where we should be focusing our attention. Spotting outlier firms. This is another one that kind of goes hand in hand with the machine learning and predictive modelling example I just talked about there. But how can we collate information, a wide range of information on the firms that we regulate, and use that to build key risk indicators to then surface the firms which we should be paying more attention to? How can we build dashboards? How can we build heat maps that will, at a glance, allow supervisors to quickly understand which of the firms that they're responsible for need further attention, or may result in having to visit the firm or go and speak to them. By using this data enrichment technique, we can pull information from across the organisation and from open source and publicly available information sources to build that really rich picture of all of the firms that we regulate. Analysing criminal networks. How can we use network and graph analytics to build a picture of the firms we regulate? How can we visualise the relationships between entities and individuals and show that in a network graph? That will then allow the supervisors to look at that graph and much more quickly understand relationships between the firms we regulate. Building realistic synthetic data. How can we use techniques like agent-based modelling to build synthetic data that contains all of the characteristics of a real data set? That's something we've seen a lot of interest in over the last year. We are now working on a project to use agent-based modelling to do that, and by having synthetic data, that really then opens up a much greater range of possibilities for the use of that data. We're then able to collaborate with external third parties without the difficulty of data privacy, because all of the data is synthetic. We can take that data and we can use it to test RegTech solutions and FinTech solutions, things that become much easier when you don't have real data that contains personal or private information. If everything's completely synthetic, it then opens up a much greater realm of possibilities for the use of that data. And so we're really excited about the work we're doing in that space at the moment. And then the last example I've got here is around automated intelligence gathering. So as our role as a supervisor, we are the information that we can pull down from the internet is extremely useful for us, especially when we're talking about things like detecting scams online, or where we are looking for how certain financial products are marketed. A lot of that information can be gathered from the web, especially with things like the adverts within Google, looking at how products are marketed. That is a really rich source of information for us. And in the past, a lot of that work was done manually. We had people doing Google searches, visiting websites, looking to find things that looked to be out of the ordinary. But we've been working hard to build an automated intelligence gathering platform that will allow us to automatically visit Google, perform searches, and then gather the information from those websites, and allow us, and when we pull that information down into a central database, we're then able to run analytics across that database. that's all kind of well and good. But what I would say is that we're sort of probably a year or two into this journey, and what we found is that all of the subtech innovation is very, very important and exciting, but you also need to pay serious attention to the kind of the stuff which is under the hood, basically. So things like building out production infrastructure that will allow subtech solutions to be scaled across the enterprise. That's very important, and it's taken us quite a long time to get to a position where we have that. Also, building out tooling for your data analysts or your data scientists, giving them a robust, secure analytics environment in which they can perform their analysis is also really important, and that's something we've been working hard over the last year or so to build out our data science workbench. And then finally, data management. It's not the most interesting of topics to people when they like to talk about innovation and machine learning and all the exciting stuff, but you can't do any of that without robust data management and understanding of the data that you have within your organisation. So for me, these have been really key points for us in our sort of subtech journey, and things which we're still working on. We definitely haven't solved all of them yet. So with that, that's my introduction to subtech, and I think now Richard is going to talk to you about the work they're doing in the markets oversight team.
Thanks, Leo, and thanks everyone for the opportunity to present. The use of technology to support our regulatory and supervisory functions at the FCA has really come to the fore in the recent years due to initiatives like the data strategy. This is music to my ears as a technologist, and it really plays into the work we've been pioneering at the FCA in the wholesale and capital market space. As a business area, market oversight has always been very data focused, so we have a dedicated team comprising data domain experts, data engineers and quantitative analysts for around 10 years. So, leveraging the building's push to data science, we've really upped our ambition and want to connect all the dots. By this I mean we want to have a holistic view of the wholesale markets under our jurisdiction. This ranges from pre-issue documentation reviews using NLP through to the listings processes, including all secondary market activities, the clearings and settlements process, and finally through to financial settlements and reporting. We need to exploit this data effectively. We're a public body after all. We must add value to the UK PLC through using this data and our technology to improve the FCA's work on market abuse, financial stability, and understand the prudential risks within some of our firms. We must also use this data to look inwardly. Are we making the best use of our resources in a changing political world and through periods of market instability? We've had to be very nimble in the last few months to answer questions which were simply not being considered 6 months ago in a pre-COVID world. As I said before, we see data at the heart of what we do in market oversight. To make the most of it, we really need to build it into our operating culture. We need to make it a virtuous circle, so we not only collect, combine and exploit, and these are normal in all organisations I'm sure, but we also need to complete that circle and use this exploitation and insight to transform how we operate and measure our effectiveness. Last but not least, there's a feedback loop to ensure we're collecting the right information in a cost-effective manner for us and the industry. Regulatory reporting is not cheap for anyone involved. So, what data do we have? In Europe, and we still are at the moment, we've benefited from a long-term strategy in the wholesale space to support clean and fair financial markets that work for all. This gives us transaction data, reference data, settlements data, positions data and others. All of these are backed by a common set of identifiers to allow us to really join the dots. Within the area, we then enrich this with market information to allow us to put this activity into context. We then overlay intelligence received from firms and intelligence sourced from our own internal algos. And from all this, we derive market insight that allows us to better understand where the likely harms are and understand how the market participants are interacting. Finally, a bit of technology-specific content from me. I'll start with the scale of the challenge we face in market oversight. some of these data sets are huge. We have over 15 billion transaction reports that contain around 60 fields, containing all the information about the transaction, including even going as far as whether this decision's been made by a human, whether it's been made by an algo, and so on. We have over 100 billion order events, allowing us to rebuild the UK equity order book. We took advantage of a big change in regulation that required a complete rewrite of all our core systems. We took the decision to move into the cloud. We took the decision to go cloud native as much as possible. Simply lifting traditional technologies into the cloud would have been missing the point and missing the opportunity. We made a key decision to separate the external systems that must run 24/7 from our analytics platform. This crucially allows us as a business team to really own that platform. We embraced parallel computing through using Scala on EMR as our processing engine. We host all our data in highly scalable columnar databases. And we also recognised that to deliver the change we wanted, we also had to be responsive, so we adopted agile development practices. This allows us to run network analytics in near real time and present back the results of the analytics to teams of analysts through dashboards. We use specialised custom JavaScript libraries to enhance the core features of these and show how connectedness the data is as required. Finally, we've opened up the platform securely, of course, to the FCA's data science community through a range of custom APIs. All of this capability allows us to turn around insight and support decision making. If previously it would have taken weeks, it's now days. If it was days, it's now down to hours. Finally, I'll show you a few screen grabs of some of our applications we use on a day-to-day basis. I wasn't brave enough to run a live demo today, maybe next time, but here are a few of our applications and output. So this first screen shows an accounts trading overlaid with the prevailing market price and market events. This shows us a market-wide overview of all spread betting activity that's going on around a market event. Obviously, products which are highly leveraged, like spread betting, are a key focus for us as a division. This is showing some of the graph analytics we have at our disposal, which is really important for us to understand how accounts are linked together with profitability matrix. This is showing the order book rebuild application we use to investigate manipulation cases. We merge all the major UK equity order books, so we have the only consolidated view in existence. This really allows us to focus on cross-market abuse cases. In terms of measuring our effectiveness, it's really important that we publish metrics to show how clean the UK financial markets are. Obviously, one metric cannot do this, and we're committed to rolling out more and more metrics over the years to come to better illustrate this point. We have detailed information around short positions across the UK sectors. This is very useful to understand pressures that are going on in the markets and may explain some of the price movements we see. And finally, this is an analysis of liquidity in the UK markets. Performing this type of analysis was crucial to understanding the resilience of the UK markets around the COVID crisis. Decisions were being made about are the markets able to function? Is price discovery still being allowed on a reasonable basis to ensure the markets were still fair for all participants? That was a whistle-stop tour through kind of the market oversight world and what we do with our data and our technologies. I'm conscious this is a narrow area of the whole RegTech world, but myself and Leo are happy to take any questions now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. We actually do have a question from Singh Aditya, one of our guests. Are you using APIs or any other technology to foster interagency regulatory collaborations, or are you aware of any such examples globally?
We aren't at the moment in our team. I'll let Richard answer from his side in a second, but no, we do collaborate quite frequently with other regulators, both within the UK and internationally. But it's more around knowledge sharing and understanding and providing insight into how we've approached what we're doing and sharing that knowledge between regulators. In terms of sharing information programmatically through APIs, that's something we definitely want to do. I think we're probably not there yet, but that's certainly something we would like to do in the future because we can see that would be very powerful.
Okay.
I'll just add to that we're not in the place, and I think regulators are not traditionally at the forefront of some of these movements, and getting all regulators to move together in one direction is obviously going to take a bit of coordination. One thing we're very keen on, and we do see requests from other regulators now, is the ability to use sort of virtual data rooms where you have sort of data hosted in a secure place, which other regulators are then permissioned to go in. This has the benefits of all the kind of security you'd expect. It shows when data is being accessed and so on. So we're very excited by the use of those as a way to share data.
And we have in the past shared where we've built tooling that's easily shared, doesn't have too many interdependencies. We have shared that code with other regulators to allow them to use something that we've built without necessarily requiring them to kind of build it again.
Okay, so I'm going to just quickly, there's two questions. What kind of capital investment or costs have you had to incur? And how long did it take you to get this up and running? Because it's amazing.
So in terms of what the work that we've been doing, it's mainly internal costs. So I saw that there was a note earlier about sharing the name of subtech suppliers. We actually build, in terms of our team, the advanced analytics team, we build most of the tooling ourselves. We did, when the team was first set up, we did some work with external third-party suppliers for some of the technologies we were looking at, but we found that being reliant on a third party was quite restrictive for us in that where there were issues with their product or it didn't quite do what we wanted it to do, getting changes to that product made in a reasonable amount of time was quite difficult. So we decided to build the tooling ourselves. So we're not beholden to third-party subtech suppliers, but the costs that we are incurring now are more from our cloud environment, the run costs, basically. We've also spent money on the build-out of the production infrastructure. So we've done that internally as well. But that certainly did take some time to get up and running, as I mentioned. I think it took a lot longer than we anticipated, to be honest. So we started building the production infrastructure about a year ago, and we're almost finished now, as it's taken much longer. I don't know, Richard, if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
No, I'd echo that, and sort of the decision we took as an area was to remain as sort of native to the cloud platform as possible to give us that flexibility. We do use some, obviously we're a small team, we haven't got the ability to build everything we need, but we've always made sure when we bring in third-party software that it's very customizable and it's very extendable, and that's really where we see our value. It's not in producing a dashboarding application per se, but it's really in being able to add in custom JavaScript libraries and really having understood the connectiveness of the data, really bring that data to life.
I don't think there are any further questions on the chat. I really want to thank you both for joining and for this very insightful presentation. Do you have anything to add before we move on?
No, I don't think so, but thanks very much for inviting us to talk today. And then if anyone wants to follow up with me or Richard, I'm more than happy to get in contact afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're moving on. I hope you're enjoying so far. Right now, before we introduce the panel session, as an introductory to the panel session, we have Mr. Varun Mittal. He's Ernst & Young's Global Emerging Markets FinTech Leader, and he's going to provide us with a brief history on the evolution of subtech. Mr. Mittal is a passionate leader in the fields of FinTech, blockchain, payments, digital banking, regulatory policies, and more. Varun, are you with us? I can see your presentation.
Yep, I'm with you.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to log off right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Varun, and I wanted to share a bit around what's subtech and how it has evolved, and what is the primary driver for why we need to have subtech. So as you guys would have seen, there is a lot of new companies coming, new use cases coming, More people are using different kind of financial services technology. While everything increased, one thing which did not increase, and a lot of regulators are here on the panel, would testify to it, the budgets of the regulatory departments have not increased. Everything is becoming faster. More and more companies are solving more and more problems. More data is coming, while the amount of resources which the regulators have not increased in that proportion. So they have to supervise a lot more transactions, a lot more companies, a lot more data with lesser resources, proportionally. So the only way for them to be able to do their job properly is to use technology to be able to understand these things and looking at how to keep up with the speed and the scale of innovation which is happening in the market. So Bank for International Settlement broadly drew out SupTech into two main areas: data collection and data analytics. That how are the different kind of data which regulators needs to collect, how can they digitize it, how can they automate it from both businesses and consumers, and then how do they manage it. And which is why, as friends from FCA shared, that managing different kind of technologies, ensuring that you have latest, greatest data, you have trail of the previous data, that's a huge part. So that all sits in the data collection side of the things. And the second part of that is, what do you do with the data? How do you look at surveillance data? How you look at misconduct, micro data, macro data, all of those kind of data. And the third aspect which is coming is technology being used to harm people? So I'll come to the specific point that are we looking at market operators using technology to harm the consumers, even though it's not illegal, but is it not right for consumers? Then the regulators need to intervene, and that also falls under the realm of supervisory tech. But the broader theme is how to lower the cost and better resource allocation to bring predictability and traceability towards the supervisor's role. And if you look at broadly, what are the different kind of scenarios? One scenario is, as FCA mentioned, APIs will come. So what Singapore, for example, has done is they have picked out some workloads. For example, when you have to understand the different regulations, when you want to pull the templates from the regulator, they have digitized the read-only side of the things because those are, I would say, less sensitive than the write access. So the read-only side, they have digitized and put it on APIs so that you can reduce the manual effort from a financial institution side, while they're working on building the data lake, building the APIs for the rest of the part. But the key part is what Singapore has been trying is looking at provisioning, extraction, real-time reporting facilities on read-only side first, while the rest of the infrastructure is being built. The key part, which is very crucial for SupTech, is how do you create real-time supervision. Recently, there were news that there were daytime traders who were doing a lot of transaction, which was causing massive movements in the stock market. You don't have time for the regulator to wait for 5 days to request data and then take an action. By that time, it's too late. The world is moving so fast. Things are being coordinated over social media channels, which you can't even have a proper surveillance on, because a lot of these social media apps, chatting apps, you can't even have surveillance. So you need a real-time access, which is both rule-based as well as algorithm and learning-based. The other aspect of it is, let's go after the bigger problems to solve instead of trying to ensure 100%. Can we do supervision by exception? And that is where the technology comes in. The different algorithms which have been built, and some of these were never designed for the use of regulators. It was designed for example, social media has to censor posts. They have to flag the spam posts. So those kind of technologies are now being used by regulators to identify the stuff which they need to act upon or intervene in the short term. The last part has been the machine learning and predictive. This is the part where Singapore is spending a lot of energy on, because what was the challenge was, it was a lot of these machine learning algorithms were black boxes. And the challenge was, you may have heard that people in the United States complained that when there were new cards from a smartphone company, the women had lower credit thresholds. And it was ultimately found that there was a machine learning issue which gave a lower credit scoring to the women. So that's the kind of things which regulators wants to avoid. So for example, in Singapore, they have a full consortium designed to just take care of, and that's also under supervisory tech, to ensure that there is fairness in this metrics around this, to promote responsible adoption of AI and data. By define, and there are more than 16, 17 companies, including EY, who are part of that consortium, to define the laws, define the governance frameworks. So think of it, when internet was formed, if every country will run its own standard, we will not be able to have interaction today sitting in different countries because there were common standards aligned. So what Singapore is looking at doing it, defining common standards for how will AI use, how will AI work, how will AI be auditable, how will machine learning be auditable. Because last thing they want is a bank or a securities company to turn up, see, we couldn't flag this, the AI said it's okay, so we said it's okay. They don't want this, and they also don't want a fully human-based approach, because you can't scale up with a fully human-based approach. So which is where they are coming together that, okay, here's how we define the standards and frameworks. Some things may still sit outside, but as long as you align with this, we can tweak the framework, you can customize the framework as it moves ahead. And examples are credit scoring, how poorer people or people with less disadvantaged backgrounds are not taken decision against, how offers are being shown, and how mis-selling may happen because of certain aspects. So looking at AI to ensure that AI is used properly, and AI is very powerful. So Singapore has said that we do not want a situation where 5 years later companies have to step in and say we will not offer this technology to the supervisory or regulatory departments, like what's happening for face recognition in some parts of the world. And they want to step in ahead that technologies and regulations work hand in hand to ensure that they can solve the needs of the whole country and the financial system to keep it safe and healthy. That would be all from my side for the presentation.
Thank you, Varun. Right now I don't see any questions from our attendees, but just quickly before we move into the panel discussion, I did want to ask you, from all of your studies about subtech and regtech and so forth, how much has it improved on the way an operator, a regulator works when they do apply subtech? I mean, what's the difference? How big is the difference from before and after?
The biggest difference comes in when the regulator decides to add more data fields from the financial institution. Because as banks started to say we will go towards Basel III, or suddenly crypto companies started to come and regulator wanted to have more information. In the traditional time, the bank would have to immediately hire a lot of developers, write the codes again, change the things. And because regulator is also figuring it out what data he needs. So which is why both sides are moving. In the traditional time, the bank will suddenly have to stop a lot of stuff and to cater to this. By doing this, what the regulator has done is, regulator said these are the templates, we will allow you to change the data at your side and submit it, or we will also allow these companies, so some companies are whitelisted, that they will get the data template beforehand. And it's publicly announced that who will get the data template beforehand, so that they can tweak it, and you can, instead of having developers tweak the data to be pulled every time, you can do it much easily from a user interface. So think of it, if you have to plug and play from a screen which data fields to add or remove, versus you have to get developers. So that's an example which allows regulator, because earlier what was happening is regulator knew that they can't ask more data, so they will put everything possible. They will throw the whole kitchen sink, okay, give me all of this. Now because they know that they can iteratively do it, so they can balance it. So that's the thing, because if you know that you're going to get only one meal in this 1 week, you will order everything on the menu. Versus you know that you can get something when you want. You can order something when you want it. You will order what you need. You will not order everything on the menu.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for your input. It was really nice. So we're going to go into the panel discussion. During the panel discussion, I'd like all of those panelists to keep their videos on, so that we see them all at the same time. If you want, you can mute when you're not speaking, but video is on at all time. So I want to hand over the panel discussion to our esteemed moderator. This is Mirna Sleiman. She's the founder and CTO of FinTech Galaxy. FinTech Galaxy is an open innovation and crowdsourcing platform that promotes financial inclusion. And Mirna has over 15 years of experience in business and digital communication, as well as having held the positions of financial journalist in well-reputed media regionally and worldwide. Mirna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lara. So hi, everyone, and it's super exciting to have this panel with us today. Oh, here we go, Luca. I was trying to find you, Luca. So, Varun, thanks for the presentation. Allow me, please, to introduce our esteemed panelists. But before we kick off the panel, I'd like to request all the attendees, other than the speakers, of course, to keep their mics and videos turned off. And any questions that you have regarding the panel, you can write it in the chat box and we'll come to it later on. So we have today with us Varun Mittal, EY Global Emerging Markets FinTech Leader. We have Mrs. Narjis Farouk Jamal, Chief Operating Officer Bahrain Bourse. Mr. Sharif Sami, Chairman of the Egyptian FinTech Association and Advisor, Arab Federation of Exchanges. And Luca Bianconi, Managing Director, Accenture Strategy, Middle East. Mrs. Narjis, I can't see Mrs. Narjis on the screen. Are you with us? All right, here we go. Okay, so we have roughly around 30 minutes to talk about Subtech, about capital markets, about the Arab region. Varun, I'm going to start with you just quickly, since you presented to us the general, spectrum about Subtech. When it comes to capital markets, what are the main use cases of Subtech, and what is the benefit of all this data management and data analytics for capital markets?
So capital markets actually has some of the most important use cases because of the kind of manipulations you see through the information networks. What are the different Twitter conversations which are happening, forum conversations which are happening, those kind of manipulations to track. That's one key part for the capital market side of the things. The other part is due diligence on these companies. So earlier, because now they have much more data about these companies available, so how can investors find this data, and if there are some kind of collaborations happening even in dark web. So we actually had a fintech in Singapore which was used by banks to actually do dark web due diligence on the clients because they were digging up what's information on this, and it was initially designed for police surveillance, but now it was used in capital market surveillance construct because they wanted to find what's the data on these people on dark web. And for a retail consumer transaction, somebody buying $3 coffee, you don't want to spend that much resources. But if somebody has a 10% movement on something or $100 million loan, then you want to track a lot of these things. So which is why a lot of traditional surveillance technologies, which were never designed for financial services, have come into capital markets.
Okay, very good. Lucas, thanks for joining us. Can you please turn off your camera?
Turn off or turn on?
Khadr, please turn off your camera. Luca, you advise a lot of regulators on their fintech strategies, on their digital transformation strategies. Do you think that we will see the advancement of Subtech just like we just saw with the UK FCA? Are we going to see something that advanced and that sophisticated in the Middle East or the Arab markets?
I think there is a growing need, and the reason for that is that today regulators collect a lot of business data in an aggregated fashion, say daily, monthly, quarterly, annually, right? And they really send standard templates. But you have I see 4 to 5 challenges to that approach. The first one is that most of the regulators today, they focus a lot on the template itself rather than on the data. So and this process is also very, very manual, and there is an overlapping of data requirement. And sharing the data itself, for what I've seen, it's also an issue also with the market operators, because what you end up doing is that you share a lot of emails, and the connection is not seamless, so on and so forth. So I think that SupTech can really be a game changer because, first of all, it can really simplify the overall, and that's our view, the overall data collection. So there will be a game where you collect once and you use many, right? You don't react the same type of data with a different shape and form. The other thing is that there will be an increased, again, through SupTech automation. The automation will come in the form of machine learning as well as we believe in the form of artificial intelligence. And the other thing, which for me is the most important thing, and we're already starting to work with some regulators on this, is the overall change in mindset from I require data on a periodic time base with real-time data. So I have them over time, and some of the example that was drawn before by my esteemed colleague Barun are very relevant. And saying that the monetary authority of Singapore is already starting to do that, as well as the authority in securities and investment commission is also starting to invest on that. Especially the Australian Commission was one of the very first to do that back in 2013.
So having the right data sets and accessing the data and layering it on top of, to find analytics and intelligence is really more important than getting the technology right. I mean, the technology you can get, as FCA said, you can get it off the shelf, you can make sure that it's scalable, you can integrate it, but then getting the data right and making sure that the proper data management and security is more important. I know both are important, but which one takes more time?
I think you need first to have a clear view. I mean, you need to have a kind of a strategy view on what you want to do with data, right? To have the right technology. I always give, and this is true for every fintech advancement, right? If you don't have the right user cases, a clear view on how you will use it, you simply buy an expensive layer of technology that will sit there, and this is happening everywhere in the world. Not only for regulators, including other actors or stakeholders in the financial system, buy a very expensive piece of technology and they don't know how to use it because they don't have a real, clear user case they can use or can leverage.
Thank you. Sharif, let's come back to our region. Please, everybody outside the panelists, turn off your cameras. Anybody who's not on the panel, please turn off your cameras so we see the speakers clearly. Sharif, coming back to the Arab market and the Arab region, and as a former regulator, are we ready for this? Do you think we are ready for this? Do we have what it takes to reach this level of sophistication in SupTech?
Yes and no. Yes, because SupTech includes a lot of components. Some are simpler than others. And no, in case we want the full-blown, data-driven artificial intelligence type that we hear and see. I'd like to echo what Mr. Ganconi from Accenture just mentioned. It's easy to get excited about expensive games and be driven by the technology people and be excited by all the bells and whistles, and then use 20% of it. I like what you call the KISS approach, keep it simple, because actually you build on. The real challenge, in my opinion, as previously said, is not the technology. It's who's going to use it and what you're going to do with it. Very quickly, for the sake of time, if the culture, the environment, the regulator, which is more or less civil service type of they are used to an old way of doing things, from and more dynamic team, younger, better educated in data, technology, risk, and so on. You'll find a lot of resistance to the more sophisticated one. I'm not worried about the data capture and data retention, where the market approves data or keeping data and so on. That's the simplest part. Historically, our most sophisticated tool has been surveillance.
Can you please increase your voice please, because I can't hear you properly. I don't know about the other speakers. Yeah.
No, I'm saying historically, because all our markets are automated, surveillance has been the most prevailing piece of subtech we have, because there are off-the-shelf products, because the teams in surveillance deal with electronic trading. Then I think if I can list them, that's where we have achieved a lot of progress. The second one would be capturing financial and regulatory reporting, but not online, not dynamic. This is an important point to remember. The other point is you can get as sophisticated as your market participants are and your supervised entities. If your own brokers are not don't have dynamic data, don't have databases that are updated constantly, then you can't get the data you need, regardless of how sophisticated your instruments are. That's the point. My third point, I'd like to mention that we've seen in the original presentation, a breakdown of subtech between data analytics and data collection. I'd like to add a third arm or a third leg, which I call, and I think it's very important for regulators, which I call investor awareness and consumer protection. I think easy access, quick answers via chatbots or rule-based answers are very important.
Thank you.
A lot of people who would like a quick answer, can I do this or no? Where would I go to do so? Today, they send an email and God knows who would answer it, or send a letter, or come and stand in line to find who to ask a question to. So I really support that we take the initiative of making investor awareness / protection another leg, and this actually can develop much faster via apps and so on. And I've seen the SCA in the UAE take some steps on that front, and I'm very happy to see it. And finally, so I wrap up my long talk. I'd like us to think capital markets not only in terms of trading on the stock exchange, but let us remember funds, let us remember securitization. And I think on both fronts, subtech is very important. If you have funds, you can't wait for 2 months or 3 months until they report what's happening. They have liquidity issues, they are exposed to the stock, they can be suspended. Redemption are a very big issue, and it's in the UK a lot of adjustment happening. So liquidity of funds and even valuation, fair valuation, is where I think if I had to put a priority, is where I'd like subtech to be involved even before trading on the stock exchange. The other one is we're not an equity market, so in bonds and securitization, it's as sensitive to know liquidity issues and the issuer's problem.
I will come back to the challenges.
Thank you.
I will come back to the challenges. Thank you, Mr. Sharif. Let me move to Narjis. Narjis, we haven't seen the regulators as busy as they are today, and it's incredible what's happening in the market, especially with the COVID-19 and all the social distancing, customer onboarding. It's all happening. What is going on with Bahrain? Given that Bahrain is one of the leading regulators when it comes to all the fintech, digital transformation, open banking. So what is happening in Bahrain, and how is the current situation pushing regulators to actually move faster and excel in their transformation?
Yeah, so generally speaking, the COVID-19 outbreak has definitely triggered the prudent need for digitization and the demand for converting almost all processes and services to being digital. Now, that has put all organizations on the fast-track line to achieve their digital transformation strategies. Now, being digitized because of that reason, and with all these innovative developments and contribution of a new fintech firms, platforms and Internet of Things, cloud services, artificial intelligence, DLTs, and many other evolutions to enable digitization, come the requirement of a new regulations. Not only that, but a completely different way of regulation. SupTech works in tandem with FinTech and RegTech. And as more innovative these platforms become, they add further complexity to the supervisory process. And digital services accompany with them and bring with them new sources of risks and threats based on their customers' experiences. Generally speaking, I believe that SupTech is not fully utilized in this region yet, and it is definitely an era that is developing and will grow very, very fast. But even though it is not yet fully utilized in this region, yet I believe that each regulator or regulatory body is using a kind of SupTech tool in place, whether it's outsourced or internally developed. They may not be as sophisticated as they should be, but there are definitely some kind of tools in place. In the Kingdom of Bahrain, all governmental entities embrace innovation and innovative developments in technology. And as an exchange, we in Bahrain Bourse have developed our own tools for surveillance, ensuring that necessary regulations are being complied with, and with the market conduct is being monitored in due course of time. Now, I can proudly say that as simple as these developed tools are, they use sophisticated machine learning, predictive analytics, and automated decision making. They work on real-time data inputs that allow smart monitoring to ensure dynamic detection of any illicit activity. We believe that we have the capabilities and knowledge of our own regulations, and as it goes for any regulator, they know better about their regulatory frameworks. Yet as our market grows further, of course, we need to put in place more sophisticated SupTech tools. I believe it's worth mentioning that we should not ignore the fact that along with SupTech arise a set of concerns and challenges that we need to overcome and address, like having structured data in place, the capacity of data, of ever-growing data, and the regular updating of the tools that we have in place. As the frameworks and regulatory frameworks change, we need to make sure that our tools are able to meet and comply with these changes. And we need to focus also on widening our data sources, and of course the cost of having such infrastructure in place. These are all issues that need to be addressed and looked at.
Thank you, Nargis. Let me best remind our participants to write down their questions in the chat room. I'll come to them in a bit. I just want to ask Luca about the strategy. It's obvious that before any regulator embarks on a SupTech activity, we have to understand what are we doing, what are we trying to achieve, why are we doing this, and what are the tools that are going to use, and what are we expecting as a result, right? But the main question that remains here, and for everybody who's attending this call, what is the main difference between the regular updates that regulators usually do to their IT infrastructure, to their reporting capabilities, versus what SupTech or SupTech is presenting these days, especially that when we went at the FCA presentation, it was very deep and very complicated. So where is the basically that shift between a regular IT update and a SupTech engagement?
So, Mina, the key difference. The key difference is the regular IT updates are for the internal infrastructure. The SupTech part comes in when you are opening it to the external side also. So there are two parts. One, where the regulator will embrace technologies which they have never used before. That's one part of the supervisory take. So for example, if they are looking at a dark web analytics or fuzzy logic analytics to identify from a lot of unstructured data, they are getting a lot of unstructured data to use it. That's one part. To embrace new technologies which they haven't touched. Second, digitize their interaction and engagement with the people they supervise and with other regulators. So premises, can they, for example, digitize suspicious transaction reporting with their regulatory, with the people they regulate? How much of that can they digitize versus today what happens is today it's a bunch of Excel sheets ping pong between the two sides. can they digitize a lot of that? So which is why supervisory tech is about as much external digitalization as well as the internal. So that is different than the traditional upgrade your infra.
Okay, and I'm assuming as well the intelligence that you get and the wisdom out of the supervisory technology is way deeper, right?
No, so the premise is let's digitize it first. Intelligence will come later. Today what happens is you don't even have it in a format which is recognizable. You need to have a consistent format for data to come from different sources, so that, because you see, you have garbage in, garbage out. If you have all the data in different formats, in different permutation, and you need 3 weeks for people to bring it into the same template, by the time your intelligence comes, see, you need to get common sense first before intelligence comes. So let's get the common sense solved, and then the intelligence can come.
Okay, Luca, it's very clear that, I mean, regulators who've been regulating and focused on really rule books and policies are not necessarily very technically geeky, let's call them that. How important is collaborating with third parties, especially with startups and fintechs who provide off-the-shelf product that can make lives of everybody much easier instead of building it in-house?
No, that I will have a very straightforward answer. It's the only way to do it. The building in-house is a model that I don't think it works. And again, not only for regulators. I mean, what we've seen is that even the largest bank globally are now partnering, and that's the way to foster innovation. Because innovation is, I mean, you can build in-house innovation, but you're better off by nurturing innovation that is initiated somewhere else. That is for sure. The other point I would like to consider also is how do you make the solution cost effective? Because today the problem I think that most of the regulators have in adopting those applications are related to their computational capacity, for example, operational risk, cybersecurity data. So the problem is that when you buy it from the outside, you need to take that into consideration. Something that you need to start thinking of, because you are starting to deal with application and solution and not necessarily right up to your standard, although they're extremely innovative. They're not up to your standard, not for the level of innovation or for the, I will call it, user friendliness they bring, but because a regulator has different aspects, right, to the game.
Okay, very good. Narjis, before I come to the questions, a lot of questions we have here. There's actually a question from Yasmin, who's actually from the Central Bank of Bahrain. She heads the fintech unit, Yasmin Sharaf. She's asking about the use cases that are unique for capital markets operations, and maybe you can, as an example, what are the use cases?
With regards to the capital market, we are trying to internally, as an SRO, to overcome all the incidents that we face in terms of market abuse, and we take necessary actions after, analyzing the data that we have on hand. And we have a structure in place where disciplinary actions can be made through a disciplinary board towards the market participants if they behave if they don't comply with the rules set and regulations. Yet it is very important to mention that relying on traditional source of data is not useful anymore. We need to make sure that our source of data is widened, and we need to have a kind of integration with governmental authorities and bodies to make sure that we have trusted data, flowing, and that our analytics tools work on that kind of data. So unless we have that sort of integration, locally speaking, that will not be efficient. So the decisions will be judgmental and on principle based, if I may say. This is one of the projects actually we're working on, to have a sort of that kind of integration in place with different governmental authorities to widen our data source.
Thank you. Sami, I want to ask you a question, but please, we don't have much time, so just keep it brief. Regarding the talent, okay, you live in Egypt, and Egypt is like has huge resources, amazing talent. Do you think that the Arab talent is ready and is capable of taking the capital markets to the next level?
The market has plenty of very smart people. I can vouch for that by fintechs, maybe banks and non-banking financial institutions are heavily relying on them gradually. I think it's a challenge for a regulator, whether central bank or the capital market regulator, to attract them, pay them properly, and motivate them to stay. And that's a big challenge. But let me build on that. I think what we did not say during our panel related issue that SUBTEC also has to provide testing beds and testing environment for fintech applications. So if I prepare fintech applications, so if I prepare a well-structured test bed, all the conditions and so on, most of our innovators and startups do not know all the business rules. But we as regulators, if we have the right environment, you can plug in and test their applications in Sandbox or whatever and give them a faster output to help them. So yes, we do have the skills. The challenge is to attract them and merge them in the regulated.
Thank you. May I ask, please, Ali, turn off your camera, please. I can see you here. Turn off your camera, because I want to invite Dr. Obaid. Can you join our panel? I have Dr. Obaid, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay,
it's a pleasure to be here.
I actually have one question for you, and basically with the panelists that we have. We spoke about collaboration a lot, and my question is, would you consider collaborating with other markets, global markets like Singapore, like UK, shorten the process of building everything from scratch, just learn from their experience? That's number one. And number two, what's your view on collaborating with fintechs? How do you plan to tap into the global talent and help the young entrepreneurs contribute to the development of the FCA?
Okay, thank you. This is very wide spectrum questions to be answered. But I think I'm seeing a smile from Sharif. Sharif is our advisor as well at ASCA. So he knows we have we are talking about fintech. We have already a sandbox for a fintech. We have already a RegTech for fintech in ASCA years before. There is a momentum. We have also UAE, by the way, it's a uniqueness financial market. As you know, the only country in the region in Arab world having financial free zones. We have the IFC, we have the ADGM, and we have the federal or the local federally financial regulator, SCA. So both of regulators having a solid fintech sandbox regulation. We have also incubator for fintech.
You're breaking up. Is it only here, or can anybody hear Dr. No. Okay. Dr. Obaid, we can't hear you. Yeah.
That's one of the risks of
Sorry, I'm reconnect once again from my mobile this time. If you are following, I could continue response to your questions. As I said, we are both in SCA, ADGM, and the IFC working in collaborations locally in a way of developing the supervision technology subject on including the fintech, regtechs, etc. Fca, for instance, we have smart system to oversee and surveillance of all transactions. We are connecting with the tradings platforms, and on the spot we are following all the breach of any laws, for an instance, and taken further procedures in this way. We have also Arab federations, so all the Arab jurisdictions under one umbrella, talking on spreading collaborations, exchange expertise, exchange the regulations, and the federations hosted by Fca under Mr. Jalil, the Secretary General, and we have a tremendous efforts in a way of adopting the subject and other technology. Also, I could mention within the GCC we have a committee working under the GCC Secretary General, also sharing the expertise here. From my position as the chair of Emerging Market Committee and the vice chair of the IOSCO has initiatives to develop the fintech, regtech, and subject as well in its visions, in its strategy. And there is too many reports. Anybody can follow reports, and they are also has a connections with other standard setter organizations internationally in a way of profiles more expertise, more regulations to all jurisdictions would like to adopt this kind of technology. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Abed. Many thanks to our panelists, Varun, Narges, Sharif, and Luca. It was really a pleasure having you with us now. I'm going to hand over the floor to Lara. Lara, all yours. And I think Rami just landed somewhere to join us now. And I'm going to turn off my camera. I think the speakers can turn off their cameras as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm back. So, very nice panel discussion. I think it was very interesting. For closing, I would like to invite our final keynote speaker, who is also Okay, can someone mute their phone? He has more than 16 years of professional experience in the field of capital markets, private equity, investments, corporate finance, strategic planning, and business development. In 2019, he took over as Secretary General for the Arab Federation in an effort to formulate a common vision for the Arab capital markets and introduce fintech ideas. Rami, are you with me?
Hello, how are you?
Hi. I can't see you though.
I'd rather not. I just landed in Maywood Airport. I'm actually inside the airport right now.
Okay.
So I'll give you a sneak peek actually, so you can make sure that I'm in the airport.
Yeah, everyone wants to know if you're in the airport or not. The airport's working.
So I apologize for that, and thank you for hosting this webinar. I would like also to thank my dear friend, Mr. Wade from Fca for organizing with us this spectacular event. I want to apologize to my dear panelists that I wasn't able to join the panel from the beginning, but actually I did hear everything, and I asked my dear friend Mr. Sharif Sami to replace me on the panel, and I heard all his good thoughts. What I want to say about capital markets and innovation and tech is simply talking to exchanges today is like talking to commercial banks 10 or 12 years back. However, exchanges and the capital markets business in essence is all about technology. It's a huge software program at the end of the day that requires a lot of attention. Everyone, almost every exchange in the region has bought their own software from NASDAQ, and have been doing fantastic business since then. However, when you come to the regulatory aspect or the SUPTEC,
just one thing, your voice is cutting off, so if you just can stand somewhere where we can hear you better, okay? Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're better.
Fantastic. So what I'm saying that SUPTEC and regulatory aspects of capital markets is very important for our kind of business. And I love actually what happened in the last few months. I love crises actually when it forces everyone to get more innovative and think out of the box. We have seen a lot of capital markets in the GCC particularly went digital, and they stopped any trading physically. The ones who were not enabled digitally had to either complete shutdown or take their own risks to continue business as usual. Everyone when talks about SUPTEC or innovation in capital markets, I think it's a scary aspect. They don't look into the bits and pieces or into the small stuff such as corporate disclosures, for example. You have no idea how such a messy thing happens. Until now, you have exchanges doing that through CD-ROMs, distributing asset holders and individual investors. The problem here in our part of the world, I would say 50% of the problem is that we're not addressing the right population yet. If my dear friend, Mr. Sharif Sami, would also confirm this phenomenon, I once asked one of my dear friends, or the heads of one of the exchanges in the region, I told him, what is the average age of your investors? I bet you it's over 55 or 60. He said, very true. Because we're not attracting the right talent or the right people to this kind of business. It is important to start attracting the younger generations who will always need innovative ideas to start trading, to start understanding, to start retrieving their data about their own portfolios. SUPTEC is not a scary area. There's a lot of use cases has to happen. However, I would say that one of the main points that we need to focus on in the coming period is to widen the base of our investors, of the Arab investors, to bring in the new generation. The new generation will not come in with the traditional procedures. The KYC has to be digitized, even if we have to reduce the regulatory aspects or the ML requirements if we create smaller portfolios for digital KYC for smaller portfolios up to $10,000, for example. You can do that for smaller portfolios and enable digital KYC for SB. This would lower the base, this would put some more pressure on the exchanges actually, because rather than dealing with few thousands of individuals that have to deal with millions, so they will be forced to go digital, they will be forced to go more innovative to communicate with all these investors. So maybe, I don't know if my dear friend Merna is still online as well. For that very specific purpose, I asked my dear friend Merna from FinTech Galaxy, let's put in a beautiful innovation hackathon, a FinTech hackathon for the Arab Federation of Exchanges to tackle the digital KYC aspect, how to open an account with the exchanges, with your broker digitally, and with what portfolio. Let's look what regulations that we have to tackle in order to make that true. We will work very closely with Merna on that hackathon in the coming few months, and I'm sure she will let you know more about when we're going to launch it, the details and everything. So finally, I would like to thank everyone for hearing me out. Apologies again for any bad connection, but I'm connecting over mobile data from Beirut Airport, so it might not be the best quality, but I love Beirut anyway, that's why I came and wanted to. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. questions for me, I'm here. Laura, you're still on mute. I cannot hear you.
Laura, you're mute. Rami, I just wanted to say alhamdulillah as-salami, glad to have you back in Beirut. And Lebanon loves everybody as well as you and me and everybody. Inshallah, iyam ahsan, better days. There's no questions from here, so I think we're going to wrap up, okay? But I wanted to ask you just one thing before. You said something very important, is this, getting more investors from the youth, and I think this is going to be, I totally agree with you, this is the future. I mean, with digitization and easier KYC and AML and all of that we're going to have more of that in the future. Already we can see things popping up in the region. So, as a close to this great webinar, I wanted just to thank our hosts, the SCA and the Arab Federation of Exchanges. I wanted to thank all our panelists, all our speakers for being part of this. It was really interesting, and you added a lot of knowledge and information. And I really want to give a special thanks to those in the back end, the organizers of this webinar from SCA and from the exchange. And I hope that we meet again all soon. Thank you. Bye.